Hi, welcome to another video. Today I wanted to talk about patterns in chess, and more specifically, an integral element for you to get good at patterns, which is the nature of the chessboard. Now, why is pattern so important? At one level, patterns is what makes humans intelligent. But zooming in into chess, patterns is so integral in chess that if you are able to identify and apply patterns, you can easily move from a beginner to an intermediate or an advanced player. But to understand patterns, you first need to understand the background on which these patterns emerge, which is essentially the chessboard. So, what is the nature of the chessboard? What are the properties of the chessboard? What are the nuances of the chessboard? These are the things that we often don't pay enough attention to. But here, I would request you to come along with me and start paying attention to the minor nuanced details of the chessboard. Let's begin. So everything in chess is about a checkmate, being able to checkmate the king. Right? Now let's assume the king is on d5. Right? So let's say the black king is on d5 and you want to checkmate. Let me see if I can use a different color. Yeah. So let's say the black king is on d5. And I give you unlimited number of pieces for white, and you can literally place them anywhere you want on the chessboard, and you need to checkmate this black king. In order for you to do that, you have to recognize first that the king has a lot of freedom. He has squares around him where he can literally move to, right? That's 3 plus 2 plus 3. So there's 8 squares around the king, which gives him that much freedom. So if you want to checkmate, you need to turn these green squares into red ones. So how can you go about doing this? So you'd say, okay, I need something like a queen. All right, so let's assume that we have a queen placed here. Let's call this the white queen. The moment the white queen is placed here, these squares become unreachable for the black king. So those things are immediately gone. Not only that, even the diagonal here is cleared out. But the king still has so many squares here. So you say, okay, let me place another white queen here. Now immediately you could say that these squares also become inaccessible to the king. So just placing 2 white queens here makes all the squares around from green to red, and therefore the black king will not be able to move anywhere. Now all you need is somebody who can give a check, which can happen with the rook here. So 3 pieces come together and create a chakravyuha of sort for the black king, where he cannot move anywhere and he is being checked by one of the pieces. So now the question to you is, what is the minimum number of pieces that one needs in order to checkmate the black king? To get to that, one needs to go into understanding the nature of the chessboard. So let's do that. So let's take a blank chessboard and say, all right, if I keep my king on d5, how many squares does he have around him? That's 3 plus 2 plus 3, that's 8. But if the same black king were there on h5 instead, then he has only 3 plus 2. The board cuts him off. So he doesn't have the remaining 3 that the king on d5 had. Now imagine the same king is placed on h1 instead. Now he just has 3 squares around him. So do you see the difference between the 3 kings here? Right? So one where the king is in the center and he has 8 squares of freedom. The second one where the king is on the edge and he has 5 squares of freedom. And the last one where the king is on h1, which is the corner, and he has only 3 squares of freedom. Now obviously, if you want to checkmate, you want to control as much of this freedom as possible. And the question to you is, where do you think it's easier to do so? when the king is in the corner or when the king is in the center. Which is also the reason why certain positions allow for checkmates to happen more easily than the others. You'd very rarely see a checkmate of a king in the center of the board, but you'll see a lot of checkmates on the edge or the corner. So let's clear the board and ask, how many corners are there? So there are 4 corners on the chessboard. This is the first thing you should observe as a chess player. How many edges are there? Edge is a place where if you place a king, he has only 5 squares around him. So I would say the edge is basically 6 squares on the first rank and 6 squares on the 8th rank. But that doesn't stop where the edges end, because you also have 6 squares on the H file and 6 squares on the A file, making a total of 24. So everything else that you see is the center or the middle of the chessboard. Why it's the middle is because when you place a piece in the middle or place a king in the middle, he has 8 squares around it. So one of the models that you need to keep in mind when you play chess is that the chessboard, the background, is your friend if you understand it. That the chessboard is not all equal. Not all 64 squares are made equal. There's a difference. The center or the middle is where you have the squares where if a king is placed there, he will be able to go to 8 different squares around him. Edge is where if a king is placed, he has only 5 squares of freedom. And corner is where he has only 3 squares of freedom. Fantastic. All great. Now you understand this. How do you apply this to get patterns? Would be the absolutely obvious next question. So let's ask ourselves, what is the minimum number of pieces that I need in order to checkmate a king in the corners? As I said, corner is easier because he has only 3 squares. So what I'm going to do is, I know that I need to have a white queen. So I'm going to place the white king right in front of him. And you already see that 2 of those squares have become inaccessible. So he has only 1 free square. So now comes the question for you. What piece can I place anywhere on the chessboard? You can pause the video here and try to solve it yourself. What square can I place any of my pieces such that the green square here turns red and there's also a check at the same time? So you could say, okay, let me try with a knight. So a knight can turn the green square into red, but is not going to be giving a check. So the knight alone is not going to be able to do this check. What about the bishop? Say I use the bishop to give a check, but the square is still green and therefore the king can escape. What about the rook? Now rook can do the job of both turning this into a red square and giving a check and therefore committing a checkmate. Now this particular checkmate is called the back rank mate, where the black king, the opponent king, is at the edge of the board. The check is delivered by the rook or the queen, and a white king prevents the king from escaping. And it need not just be the white king, it can be anybody who can prevent the king from coming out. Now, if this is very clear to you, then you can actually try your hand out by going to Lichess, going to practice and clicking on, just giving a minute for it to open, clicking on checkmate patterns. Okay, yeah, so here it is, checkmate patterns. And if you see this, the first one is back rank mate. So the very first puzzle is very simple. The same idea, the king is on the edge of the board and you give a check with the rook. And the king can't come out thanks to his own pawns and can't escape thanks to the rook controlling it. Apply the same idea here. It's a little extra complicated because you first need to capture the rook, and once he captures, you capture it back. But you see the pattern evolving, right? Because the king is on the edge of the board. You need to observe that, and the nature of the board, or understanding the nature of the board, will really help you. So I'll stop here, and I would request you to try out problem number 3 and 4. And if you're able to solve, you can actually leave your success stories in the comments by stating that, hey, I understood this, helped me, and I was able to solve it. I look forward to hearing from you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, please do so. And I'll try and ensure that I have a regular stream of insightful videos like this, which should help you become a better chess player. Thank you so much.